Welcome to another session of Mesilat Yesharim, the path of the just. We are in chapter 12, is it? Chapter 11, where we are discussing the moral quality or characteristic of reaching a level of cleanliness. What's the purpose of human life? You're learning the summary of the 11 chapters. We're going to give it to you in 2 minutes or less.
Get pleasure through connecting to Hashem.
Right. The purpose of a Jew's life in this world is to have the pleasure of connecting to God, and the connection to God occurs when we reach a certain level of moral perfection. In order to reach that perfection, we need to do that using the mitzvot. The way that we achieve perfection is through performing two types of mitzvot, of commandments. We have prescriptive commandments and prohibitive commandments. Prescriptive commandments are the do's. Prohibitives are don't do. And by performing the mitzvahs, we are improving ourselves, hence this is called life skills, because you're going to learn life skills. And the whole purpose of the maintenance of the mitzvot system is to get you to connect to God. And the connection to God is because you will have the best pleasure that you could ever have. Yes, I know you think that you've experienced the most amazing pleasure, but this is even greater. Why? Because it could last much longer than most of you could last. So, midat zehirut is carefulness, which says that we should, before we act, before we do something, we need to evaluate it. Does it fit with the Torah? Is it leading me to my moral perfection or not? And after performing an action, we use that moral characteristic to evaluate our action. Did we do it the best way? So I gave the example to the guys that I helped an old woman with her bags, right? And I carried it up and put it at her doorstep, and she came up after me. What I could have done was get to her main building and then take the bag and just go like this and throw it at the door, right? I said, I'm not going up, it's up there, you run up there, right? If I would have done that, then it would mean that midat az-zehirut, the carefulness, would kick in and say, did you do it the best way that you could? And the answer was, I felt that I did. I smiled, I said, thank you. She wanted to pay me. I said, no. She said, please, I really want to pay you. And I said, it's okay, so how much? She said, 10 shekels. I said, you got to be kidding me, lady. I'm kidding, that's not what happened. But that's the idea. The midat carefulness is that we evaluate before we act and after we act. Then there is the next moral characteristic, the midah. Midah is moral characteristic or virtue of zrizut. Zrizut means quickness, which means that I motivate myself. I go against my natural bodily nature to stay stationary. And I get up and I push myself to do mitzvahs. And it also has two phases. One, before, sort of the kickstart, right, the starter, but it's also an alternator. Do you know what an alternator does in a car? It charges the battery. It keeps you going. And that midah, that moral virtue, essentially continues until you finish the mitzvah. Doing half a mitzvah is not going to help you. You need to be able to push yourself to actually complete it. So like the pen that I found, right? So, okay, I kept it, I'm preserving it, but I got to finish it. I got to get it into the hands of the person who lost it. That is to finish the mitzvah. So in lots of the mitzvahs, there are steps in between, and the idea is, the midat zrizut, is that it pushes you, it gives you enough of the energy and motivation to finish it. And why are you doing all the mitzvahs? To perfect yourself. Why do you need to perfect yourself? Because your perfection, the level of your perfection means it's the level of your connection to Hashem. Now we get to midat nikiyut, the moral virtue of cleanliness, where the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who wrote Mesilat Yesharim, the path of the just, the Ramchal tells us that the next moral virtue above those is called cleanliness, and it doesn't refer to physical cleanliness and dressing nicely and all of that. It refers to the removal of the desire to sin. And we had a debate whether there are some sins that we should have a desire to sin, that is, it's normal, right? And I think the consensus in the room was that it's okay to have a desire for a 20-year-old blonde as long as you control it. So some people said not the 20-year-old blonde, they wanted the brunette and the redhead, they had all this. I remember, I'm holding in the sugya, right? I'm holding in the sugya. That goes back to other things that we learned.
You said it wasn't okay.
Wait, we
should
discussed
try to
it.
get rid of it if we can.
The Ramchal holds that we should get to the level of getting rid of it completely. Why? Because when we have the desire to sin, we are going to look at different situations and try to say, what I'm doing is right. What? We are going to justify what we do. No, the Torah says you cannot do this. This is not what I'm doing. And we spoke about theft. Most people are not going to go outright and steal. Right? You're not going to walk up to somebody, punch them in the nose, and take their wallet. Correct? You thought about it. Okay, good, because now I have to worry, because Tuvia and Daniel are going to have to take care of you. So, but Aaron, right, you don't have a desire to steal.
Right.
But if you get a job and you're getting paid hourly and your friend calls you on the phone and you're on the phone for 10 minutes, that seems to be okay. The Ramchal says that's also stealing. That is, there are aspects of theft that we might not consider theft because we've defined it in a certain way. But in other things, it's perfectly fine. If we're trying to sell a car, we're going to polish it, get it clean, and make it as nice. And if somebody asks, is anything wrong with the car? No, nothing's wrong with the car. Everything's fine. Oh, really? Yeah. Is these original wheels? Yeah. No, I brought brand new. Do you want the original? You don't want the original. That is, when we try to sell something, we try to present it in the best light possible. But sometimes we cross the line because we want to make a profit. So we talked about in business, they have to be very, very careful not to steal. Because people think, well, I sold the product, I didn't steal from him, he paid for it, he knew what he was getting. Not always. Not always. Question is, the Kuntris Chesed of Rabbi Dessler, Rav Dessler, talks about, he says, it raises the question, what is an acceptable profit margin in a business? That beyond that you would say stealing. If it costs you, what?
3 times the amount of the product.
You want to say that 3 times? So if an iPhone costs to make $20
Oh no, much more, sorry.
and you sell it for $400, are you stealing?
No,
No.
you're not stealing.
Depends on the product and how often people are buying it.
Depends what you get with it. If
It's
you
not
get good
stealing at
service
all. It
with
could
it.
be.
It doesn't depend on what you get.
buyer has the
They chose to buy for $400.
So that's what the Ramchal is talking about. If I have something that I bought for a penny and I'm selling it for $100, the question is that gezel? And you say no, because the guy's paying for it.
No. The guy has the option whether or not to buy it or not buy it.
The fact that you have an option doesn't mean that what I am doing is right.
No, but that's the market value.
What?
That's the market value.
I think it depends, like let's say iPhone, okay, let's say it takes $20 to make it and they're selling it for $400, but each step of the process, who knows, like you have to pay each person, you have to pay a factory worker, you have to pay the people who ship it, you have to pay the people who sell it.
Yeah.
And depending on if everybody's getting paid fair.
So let's say it costs you 50. We include all those costs. And you're making $500 to make it easy math.
Yeah,
Right? Because some rabbis aren't good with math. So does that mean that is a type of theft?
It's not the Jewish way. I don't know.
So the Ramchal says that there is a limit to those sort of things. And when you are trying to sell, you are trying to, he says like this, ראה בעניין ההונאה. Hona'ah is when you present something not the way that you probably should. He says, כמה נקל לאדם להתפתות ולהיכשל. How easy is it for a person to fail, to do the right thing? כאשר לכאורה ייראה לו, because he appears, he says, look, I have a product that I'm trying to sell. Okay? So he says, ישתדל לייפות סחורתו בעיני אנשים ולהסתכר ביגיע כפיו. He wants to sell his merchandise and make it as beautiful in the eyes of the buyers that he can in order to make a living. And therefore he speaks to the purchaser, למאי נתרצה לו. And he says, you're going to do this and we're going to do this. He says, but if you keep going and keep going, you push it, you might be guilty of cheating. Just a very, very important idea. Capitalism and Judaism are not always congruent because in capitalism, at least in some level, we are supposed to pursue the profit. Make as much money as possible with as little money to put in. And that is a problem because we talked about this before. We should have a balance. We should take from this world in equal amount that we give to this world. So you have to make a living, we have to make a living. Do we have to make sure that we can take care of our family? And yes. The question was, how much? How much is enough? And if you can't say how much is enough, you say it's never enough, there's always another billion and another million and another this, you got a problem. Yes?
Let's say you're selling something on eBay. Someone tells you to sell something like sell my chair or whatever. And you know, it costs whatever, £400 or something like that, whatever, and then you get a certain price for it. How much of the money do you keep yourself potentially, and how much does the seller that sold you that thing keep?
I don't know.
As in, is there any, how would you work it out?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's a good question. Don't know. Let me think about it. It's a good question. So that's what we talked about last week. Okay? Now we get to your favorite topic. There was a Beastie Boys song. You guys remember the Beastie Boys? Do you know the Beastie Boys? They had a song named Girls. Right? So he says that you have two categories. There's more categories, he'll bring more. But the top two categories where people justify what they do, one is in gezel, which is a form of theft. It's not outright theft because you're not using violence, you're not doing it sort of taking, there is another way that you're doing it, and it's a problem. The next has to do with illicit sexual relations, arayas. He says there, in this area, people always make all sorts of excuses. And we'll learn it inside and see what we can learn from it. So he says the following. If you want to clean yourself of this, which means what? You're supposed to clean yourself. You can get to a level where you don't have this. So if you want to, you have to work a great deal. כי אין בכלל האיסור גופו של המעשה בלבד, אלא כל הקרב אליו. Because what the Torah forbids is not only the act itself, which is what earlier was suggested going all the way. That's not the only thing that the Torah forbids. As Teddy mentioned, even touching is forbidden, right? And so the question is, how do we deal with this? So he says the following. The Kadosh Baruch Hu says, don't say, this is a great thing, listen to this. Don't say to yourself, since I'm not allowed to sleep with a woman, I'll just grab her. And I don't have a sin. Or, I'm just going to give her a hug. And I'm not sinning. Because I'm not sleeping with her. I'll just kiss her. And there's nothing wrong with that. Kadosh Baruch Hu, God says to us, don't say this to yourself. Don't kid yourself, saying, I didn't go all the way. I just went this far. He says, don't make that mistake. Don't try to justify this to yourself. Okay? The Kadosh Baruch Hu says, כשם שאם נדר נזיר לשתות יין, אסור לאכול ענבים, לחים ויבשים משרת ענבים, וכל היוצא מגפן היין. אף אישה שאינך שלך, אסור ליגע בה כל עיקר. So the Midrash there says that the idea here is that the relations between man and a woman are compared to the relationship of a Nazir, which I'll explain in a minute what a Nazir is, to wine. A Nazir is a person who takes a special vow not to do certain things. It is a temporary vow that a person takes for 30 days, for 50, whatever amount that he decides. And once he makes the vow, there's certain things that he cannot do. He cannot drink wine or have any contact with grape and grape products. Can't cut his hair and can't touch the dead. Okay? Those are three things. Rav Shulman, is there anything else that a Nazir? Three things, right? של נזיר שאסור לו, יין, תספורת ולטמא המת. That's it. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I remember correctly. Yes?
Well, under what circumstances do you make a vow like that?
It's up to you. A person decides to make a vow, he makes a vow. Today, please don't make this vow because there's no way to get out of it. Because at the end of the vow, you need to go to the temple and bring a sacrifice. So if there's no temple, you're going to get stuck. And your hair is going to be really, really long. And you won't be able to eat soup. Because then your beard's in the soup. That's somebody says, why don't you grow a long beard? Soup. Soup, man. You know, you don't want to eat chicken soup and then, have your beard in your soup.
It's the flavor saver.
Ooh. Seen those people that take the soup, they put it in there. I guess that's what it is, right? Here's this carrot. I was looking for this. All right. So, in the same way that a Nazir can't touch any grape products, whether it's raisins, raisin wine, anything, he has to stay completely away. That is how our relationship to a woman should be. That is, the Torah says you can only be with a woman that is yours, not that is yours tonight and not tomorrow, right? The idea is no. Until she is your woman through Kiddushin, through marriage. Okay? So he says, the Ramchal, he says the following. We have to remember that the relations can take place with any of our senses. Hearing, touching, obviously, seeing. So he says, Re'iyah, dibur, shmi'ah, v'machshava. It's sight, hearing, touching, and also thought. So all of those things you have to pay attention. And then the Ramchal brings us different examples from Chazal, from the rabbis in the Talmud, of their teachings with regard to the level in which by which we should be very careful, to which we should be very careful. So he gives an example that someone who, let's say you see a girl that you like and you're giving her change. So you look at her hand, you're looking at her hand, and the reason you're prolonging the process of the change is because you like to look at her hand. And that is not appropriate. And he says, gives more examples. He says that when you look at a woman's finger who's not your wife and you're enjoying it, it is as if you looked at her private parts. Because it doesn't really matter which part of her body you're enjoying. She's not yours to enjoy. It's a form of theft. It's a form of theft. You're the only one nodding. That's why I'm a little worried. Aaron. All of them are like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. How do I really know that she's not married? She's not yours. She's not yours. He says you have to be very, very careful. You should be very, very careful with these things. He says a person who goes to a wedding and he sees the bride and he says, I know why she's getting married. It's terrible. Yeah, you know what it says? Even that if he has a gzar din, that from Shemayim they said you're going to live till 70 with no worries, they turn everything upside down because he said it. Because you are essentially thinking of things that you shouldn't. She's another man's wife. Why are you thinking about these things? Because you should have seen your face when I gave the example. You're like, we should have this big mirror here that you can see yourselves, and that way you'll know. Like, why is the rabbi looking at me? Why? Have you seen yourself? So, okay.
You can always make sure you're anything now, it shouldn't matter quite, right?
The thing is that if you make tshuva on something and then you go and do it again, and then do it again, at some point Hashem says, wrap it up, buddy. Put a knot in it. Right? The idea is you can't make tshuva. It's not a complete tshuva if you're repeating the same sin over and over again. You have to put gedarim, fences between. If you know you have an issue, for example, pistachio ice cream. So I avoid going to ice cream shops because it's hard for me. Have I ever eaten pistachio ice cream after being fleshik? No. But I don't go, and it doesn't bother me anymore. Not an issue. Like somebody says, I want to see, I have so much control of my desire, I am going to try. Okay? And they put them to go to the beach. Not the men-only beach. Right? And I don't desire anything. Don't desire. I do not desire this. That's ridiculous. I don't desire you. I do not desire you. You'll get arrested. Like you're walking around. No. Right, Tovia? It doesn't work that way.
You have to remove yourself from desire, man.
There is no reason. Now, once you get to a level, the Rambam says that a Baal Tshuva, in order to do complete Tshuva, he has to return to the scene of the crime and resist the desire that he had when he did it. It's a very, very high level because you are essentially putting yourself at risk. He gives the example of a man who slept with a woman. And he says you won't know until you did complete tshuva, till you put yourself back in the scene of the crime and saw that you have full control over it.
Hashem will put you back in that position, I know. At one time in your life, he'll probably send that thought into your mind.
Okay.
Put you in a position where...
Okay.
Is that
Maybe.
what it means?
I think in that situation, you know when you're ready to put yourself in that position.
Yes.
Does that mean like literally? Because like
I think
of a few situations where that wouldn't be such a good idea.
I agree. Especially when there are isurs, you're going to be over a few biblical commandments in order to get to that level. Yeah?
That's what I'm saying. So it's not literally.
I don't know. It's hard to say that the Rambam says something that he doesn't mean literally.
Because think about it like this, like hypothetically speaking.
I don't want to hear the hypotheticals. Let's assume I get it. I get it. I understand exactly what you're talking. Let's keep going. And you and I could talk about this later. But I do charge $250 an hour for that type of talk. Okay, next. So we finished with this idea that we have to protect our ears, right? Because our ears also is something that we hear a woman singing, it's very attractive. And so that's why it is asur to hear a woman sing. We shouldn't look at women. Now, it doesn't mean you walk like this. Right? I'm not telling you to be like this. Or like me. If I take off my glasses, I can't see past here. So I could have people, you could walk and wear whatever you want. I won't see it. So I don't think that that's the point. The point, we're going to live in a world. The society in which the Ramchal lived and many of the Rishonim lived was a society where modesty was the standard. Unfortunately, what we have to face is that today there is no such thing as modesty. There is no modesty. And sometimes when you have modesty, in the business world, modesty comes right off. Why? Because it's not based on anything internally. Modesty is a reflection of humility. Modesty is somebody who says, I don't want to stand out. It's a reflection of internal humility. When a person is not modest, they are not a humble person. Because they are reflecting themselves outside. And what are they trying to do? Call attention to themselves. That is not humility. And so we live in a society that is essentially immodest. And I understand it's very difficult to be outside and not see things that probably should be covered. But keep in mind that a girl who dresses and shows skin, that skin is like manure. It will attract only pigs. It will. And that's not the type of girls you should be with. For your own good, not for me, but for your own moral development, for your own future of what type of woman you want to role model for your kids, think about it. Yeah, it might be fun for 5-10 minutes, maybe longer, right? But what are you going to do? You want that to be the role model for your daughter? I was talking to a group of guys from Florida, and one of them said that, his girlfriend dresses in a certain way, and she's very attractive, and he likes it, and and I said, okay, let's say you marry her. Do you want your daughter dressed like this? No way. Well, why not? Why not? What's wrong with it? No, I don't want, my daughter, no way. So I said, how is your daughter going to get the values to dress modestly if you are dating girls that don't dress modestly? How is that going to develop? Where's that going to come from? If you don't model good behavior, your kids are not going to model good behavior. If you don't live the way you should live, you're not going to attract a woman that is going to live according to your values. And you're going to have a big problem. You're going to. It's a big challenge. Correct. I agree with you. It's a big challenge out there. It's a very big challenge. But the focus you should always ask yourself, what are the things that are important to me? What is it? Am I interested? Yes, fun, I get it. I get it. But the point of human life, as we learned from the Ramchal, is to have pleasure by connecting to God. And is this bringing you closer to Hashem, bringing you closer to God, or farther from God? That's it. It's a simple question. Is it hard to do, to resist and to deal with it? No. That's why the Ramchal told us that we have midat zirut and midat zrizut. We have two moral qualities that we've worked on and improved to get to this level. Once we get to this level of nikiyut, of cleanliness, what we are trying to do is to remove the desire altogether. But remember, what he's talking about is a different society than what we're dealing with. It's true. You have a greater challenge. But remember, your reward is dependent upon the challenge and the difficulty of your moral perfection. The more difficult it is for you to achieve your moral perfection, the greater your reward. Lefum tzara agra, says the Gemara. The more difficult it is for you to reach that level, the greater your reward is going to be. The question is, do you live your life according to your immediate desires, or can you postpone them for a better life? And most of you, when it comes to money, when it comes to lots of different things, can push it forward and say, okay, I get it. I'll save money, I'll go to school, I'll go through all these things because I'll have a delayed satisfaction. Think about it the same way with a girl. Be'ezrat Hashem, Hashem will give you strength. Next. So he says a person has to pay very close attention to the use of language. Because this is also an area where people justify. They get mad, what do they say? F-bombs. Fly them. Roll them. Boom, boom, boom. Curses. Right? And it's a big problem. Because this is not how we should speak. No matter what goes on. By cursing, are you making the situation any better? Are you?
Making myself feel better.
Really?
Yeah.
How would you feel better?
It's release.
A release of what? Can't you just say other words?
Doesn't feel as good.
Then you need to work on this. Because if you feel good doing a sin, then you need to work on it.
Where does it say you can't curse? It's just a word. If I use certain words.
Here. It says al-nibul pe, that it shouldn't. Because it's a sign of anger. Because when the sign of anger is when then your anger is allowing you to lose restraint. And when you lose restraint, you are going to say whatever comes out.
Isn't it better me say that word than punch the guy in the lip?
Why would you punch him in the lip? Chas v'shalom.
Just walk away, breathe in.
Just do what I do. You think people don't get me mad? When they get me mad, I just look at them and I say to myself the following. Not my circus, not my monkeys. And I walk away. Not my circus, not my monkeys. It's not my circus. Crazy people do crazy things. I'm not here. I can't educate the whole world. I can't get all the world to live like me. Maybe that's not what Hashem wants either. But I am going to violate biblical commandments by cursing. Why? Is it worth it? For what? Because of this guy? So he called me an idiot. So what? Some guy said, "You're an idiot." I said, "Okay, thanks." He was like, No, you're an idiot. Got it. What's he gonna do? I mean, he was kind of like this, puzzled. Like, he expected a reaction. There are people who love tension. Why? Tension is something that operates in two aspects of our personality. Okay, we have our consciousness and our unconsciousness or unconscious aspect. On the consciousness level, tension causes suffering. We do something, and now it's going to be a mess, and it's going to be suffering. But on the subconscious level, what happens? All your senses, everything are heightened, and you are much more in tune to what is going on. And subconsciously, there is pleasure to your soul through this. The way to avoid this is when someone is trying to create tension, don't get into the tension. Just don't. And trust me, when somebody is trying, you'll see they're trying to cause tension. And if you are aware that they are trying to create a conflict with you, don't get into the conflict. It's the easiest thing to do. And once you do it, you feel very empowered, and the person across from you, you'll see, will change their behavior over time. And they'll realize that I can't get a rise out of this person. And it's something that you have to work on. Somebody came to me the other day with, he had a certain situation, he made certain decisions, which it says, and you have to help me. And I said, wait, this is your situation. I said, yeah. I said, I'm really sorry. What are you going to do? He says, what do you mean? I said, yeah, what are you going to do? And he says, well, I want you to. I said, well, it's not my problem. I'm just trying to understand, what are you going to do? I can help you, give you some advice of what you could do, but ultimately, that's your issue.